हेलो स्टूडेंट्स, वेलकम टू माय चैनल ओमनी ज्ञान। मेरे चैनल ओमनी ज्ञान में आप सब लोगों का फिर से बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। सो टुडे वी विल बी लर्निंग द स्टोरी जायंट डिस्पेयर रिटन बाय जॉन बुनियन एंड दिस इज इन द इंग्लिश सिलेबस ऑफ क्लास 11। ओके, एंड हियर आई एम गोइंग टू डू यू अ फुल एक्सप्लेनेशन। ओके, मैं यहाँ पे आप सब लोगों को एक फुल एक्सप्लेनेशन दूंगा। ओके, सो प्लीज वॉच द वीडियो विथ पेशेंस। कीप द टेक्स्ट बुक ऑल्सो इन फ्रंट ऑफ you. Okay, so the story in short. Okay, so giant despair is a character there. Okay, he is a giant. Okay, वो एक दानव है. He is a giant and he is the owner of a castle which is known as doubting castle. Okay, तो giant despair जो है वो एक castle का owner है. उस castle का नाम है doubting castle. Okay, doubting castle का वो owner है, मालिक है. Okay, nearby to this castle two persons named Christian and Hopeful are sleeping. तो उसी केसल के पास जो है दो पर्सन्स जो है, देयर आर टू पर्सन्स एंड दीज टू पर्सन्स आर एक्चुअली पिलग्रिम्स. पिलग्रिम्स मीन्स person who undertakes a religious journey. Okay, there are two pilgrims. So persons in the sense they are two pilgrims and the name of these two pilgrims are Christian and Hopeful. तो Christian और Hopeful नाम के दो pilgrims जो है उसी केसल के पास, okay, nearby to this castle, two pilgrims or two persons whose names are Christian and Hopeful, they are sleeping. Okay, they are sleeping unaware. They are not aware of anything about that area. So they are just sleeping there. Okay. Now next morning what happens? Giant Despair sees these two men sleeping on his grounds and catches them. So that area belongs to this Giant Despair only. Okay, because this area belongs to the Giant Despair, so he becomes angry, and next morning when he sees them, actually he becomes very angry that who are these two people sleeping on my area. So he becomes very angry and he catches them. Now when the giant asked who they were and where they have come from, the two men replied that they were pilgrims and had lost their way. तो जब giant उनके पास गए, when the giant went near them, he asked, who are you? Where have you come from? So these two men, Christian and Hopeful, they reply that we are pilgrims and we have lost our way. So the giant now told them very angrily that they had entered his area without his permission. तो giant ने कहा कि तुम लोग मेरी एरिया में घुसे हो मेरे परमिशन के बिना, तो तुमको मैं जेल के अंदर डाल दूंगा. ओके, सो आई विल नाउ कैच यू एंड यू आर नाउ माई प्रिजनर्स. तुम दोनों जो हो मेरे प्रिजनर्स हो, बोथ ऑफ यू आर माई प्रिजनर्स एंड आई एम गोइंग टू पुट यू inside the jail. So jail here is what? The giant catches them and puts them in a dark and stinking dungeon. Dungeon you can say a kind of a cave. Okay, a very deep cave. Okay, जैसे कुआं होता है ना, well. Okay, a well or a cave which is very deep. Okay, so the giant catches them and puts them in a dark and stinking dungeon. Okay, ठीक है. So now these two pilgrims, Christian and Hopeful, they are prisoners now, prisoners of this giant. Okay, what is the name of the giant? The name of the giant is Giant Despair. Okay, now Christian and Hopeful was kept in the dungeon from Wednesday morning till Saturday night without food, drink and light. So there was no light in the dungeon and they were not provided with any food, water or any kind of drink. So they were without food, drink and water and light also from Wednesday morning till Saturday night. So आप लोग याद रखिए, please remember, from Wednesday morning till Saturday night Christian and Hopeful was kept in the dungeon. Okay, now this Giant Despair had a wife named Diffidence. तो Giant Despair का एक बीवी था जिसका नाम Diffidence था. Please remember the names. Okay, and later on I have made some analysis also. Those analysis will help you why the names of the characters are as such, like Diffidence, Hopeful, Christian, okay, Giant Despair. Okay, why these names have been given in this way. Okay, ऐसे नाम क्यों रखे गए हैं characters के, ठीक है. But let us first learn the story. So he informed his wife. So the Giant Despair, he went and informed his wife of the two prisoners and asked her what he should do to the prisoners. So Giant Despair goes to his wife and informs her that today I have caught two pilgrims. They are now my prisoners. I have kept them in the dungeon सो व्हाट शुड आई डू विद देम, मैं उनके साथ क्या करूँ, ऐसे दो प्रिजनर्स को आज मैंने, ऐसे दो लोगों को आज मैंने पकड़ा है, वो मेरे प्रिजनर्स है, तो उनके साथ के मैं क्या करूँ, ठीक है। ही आस्क्स अ काइंड ऑफ एन एडवाइस फ्रॉम हिज वाइफ डिफिडेंस। अब डिफिडेंस जो है एडवाइस देता है जायंट डिस्पेयर को। नाउ डिफिडेंस एडवाइजेस जायंट डिस्पेयर टू बीट द टू प्रिजनर्स मर्सिलेसली द नेक्स्ट मॉर्निंग। ओके, सो डिफिडेंस द वाइफ वो अपने हस्बैंड जायंट डिस्पेयर को ये एडवाइस देता है कि तुम कल सुबह जाके दोनों को बहुत मारो। ओके, मर्सिलेसली यू बीट देम नेक्स्ट मॉर्निंग। दिस इज द सजेशन दैट डिफिडेंस गिव्स टू जायंट डिस्पेयर। So next morning, following his wife's instructions, next morning, Giant Despair goes and Giant Despair beats Christian and Hopeful mercilessly. मतलब बहुत mercilessly जो है, without showing any mercy, Giant Despair जाके Christian और Hopeful को बहुत मारता है वो, ठीक है। He beats them like anything. So as a result, obviously, as a result of the extreme beating, Christian and Hopeful are unable to move due to pain. They lay in the dungeon groaning. Groaning मतलब crying loudly in pain. When you're in pain, you cry loudly, but in pain. Okay, दर्द में जब कोई चिल्लाता है उसे हम groaning या moaning भी कहते हैं. Moaning is soft, groaning is loud. So क्योंकि क्रिश्चियन और होपफुल को इतना मारा गया कि वो हिल नहीं पा रहे थे. They were unable to move because of the pain, because of that beating they received, great pain, and they were unable to move also, and they lay in the dungeon. Whole night they were in the dungeon, whole day, whole night they were in the dungeon, groaning, okay, crying loudly in pain. Then what happens is that next wife, again the giant goes and tells his wife that yes, today I have beaten those two prisoners. Next what should I do? ठीक है, तो जायंट जो है अपनी वाइफ को जाके फिर से पूछता है कि मैंने आज उनको मारा, तुमने कल बोला था मारने के लिए, तो मैंने आज उन दो प्रिजनर्स को बहुत मारा, तो नेक्स्ट मैं क्या करूं? तो नेक्स्ट नाइट जायंट्स वाइफ एडवाइज्ड हिम टू प्रोवोक द टू प्रिजनर्स टू कमिट सुसाइड. ठीक है, तो जायंट डिस्पेयर के वाइफ ने ये एडवाइस किया जायंट डिस्पेयर को कि तुम एक काम करो, तुम कल जाओ और दोनों को प्रोवोक करो, दोनों को उकसाओ ताकि वो suicide commit कर सके. Okay, so that they can commit suicide because there was no way they could escape, so it was better to end their lives. ठीक है, तो समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. Let us try to understand this thing once again. Okay, so giant's wife advised her husband, the giant despair, that tomorrow you go, you provoke the two prisoners, that see, you cannot escape from my dungeon, so it is better to end your life here only, so it is better that you commit suicide. क्योंकि तुम दोनों तो भाग नहीं सकते मेरे डंजन से, मेरे बहुत मोटे मोटे दरवाजे हैं, भागने का कोई उपाय नहीं है, देयर इज़ नो वे टू एस्केप. तो बेहतर यही है कि तुम दोनों जो है सुसाइड कमिट कर लो ताकि सब झमेला ही ख़त्म हो जाए, क्योंकि तुम भाग तो नहीं सकते यहाँ से. ठीक है, तो ज़िंदगी भर विदाउट फूड एंड विदाउट वाटर, विदाउट लाइट, यू आर गोइंग टू स्टे इन द डंजन फॉर होल लाइफ. सो इट इज़ बेटर दैट you are going to suffer a lot also. So it is better that you commit suicide. But the two prisoners refuse to commit suicide. So when the two prisoners refuse to commit suicide, the giant goes into his occasional fits. Fits मतलब madness. तो actually उन दो prisoner को, hopeful and Christian को, जब ये giant जाके बोलता है, when the giant goes and tells the two prisoners that you commit suicide, both the prisoners they refuse to commit suicide. वो दोनों मना कर देते हैं कि नहीं, हम लोग नहीं मरेंगे, we will not commit suicide. We are okay as we are. Okay, so the giant becomes mad, and giant का एक problem है. The giant has a problem that whenever he goes into madness, whenever he goes into his occasional fits मतलब madness. Okay, fits means madness. So whenever the giant goes into kind of madness, it makes his limbs temporarily unable, so he is unable to move also. Okay, तो ये एक प्रॉब्लम है जायंट का. जब भी वो पागल जैसा हो जाता है, मतलब अगर उसको कोई बात पसंद नहीं, इफ़ ही डज नॉट लाइक एनीथिंग और इफ इज टू एंग्री, सडनली ही विल कैच काइंड ऑफ मैडनेस. सो व्हेन ही कैचेस दिस मैडनेस थिंग, हिज लेग्स, हिज लिम्स, ओके, हिज लेग्स बिकम्स टेम्पररीली इनएक्टिव. उसका लिम्स जो है वो टेम्पररीली, लेग्स जो है वो टेम्पररीली इनएक्टिव हो जाता है, वो हिल नहीं सकता. He cannot move. So after sometimes what happens, after he goes into madness and he is unable to move, his limbs become temporarily inactive or unable. वो कुछ देर बाद वो prisoner को छोड़ के चला जाता है. He leaves the prisoner there and he leaves. Okay, जैसे तैसे करके वो वहाँ से चला जाता है giant despair. Now again the prisoners are left alone. Now, when the prisoners, Christian and hopeful, they are alone in the dungeon, they discuss what they should do. तो क्रिश्चियन और होपफुल जो है वो दोनों डिस्कस करते हैं कि क्या करें, व्हाट शुड वी डू, शैल वी कमिट सुसाइड और शैल वी ट्राई टू रन अवे, और व्हाट शुड आई डू. तो होपफुल केम टू द कंक्लूजन दैट डेथ वाज बेटर देन दिस टॉर्चर. ओके, तो होपफुल एक टाइम पे कंक्लूजन पे आता है कि इट इज़ बेटर टू कमिट सुसाइड ओनली. ओके, बिकॉज डेथ वाज फार बेटर देन दिस टॉर्चर. बट होपफुल अगेन थिंक्स दैट Lord, that means God actually forbids them to kill anyone, including themselves. ये तो बाइबल में है. Now this story is actually the story has Christian elements also here. Okay, so according to the Bible or according to the holy book of the Christians, hopeful says that God forbids us to kill anybody. It means that God forbids us to kill ourselves also. अगर भगवान किसी और को मारने की इजाज़त हमें नहीं देता तो खुद को मारने की भी परमिशन गॉड हमें नहीं देता है. तो हम ना तो किसी और को मार सकते ना तो हम खुद को मार सकते. ओके, और होपफुल ये भी कहता है कि द जायंट डज नॉट हैव ऑल द लॉ इन हिज हैंड. पूरे दुनिया का जो लॉ है वो जायंट के पास अकेला तो नहीं, बिकॉज गॉड इज ऑल पावरफुल, द जायंट इज नॉट, है ना. ऑल पावरफुल वी कैन से दैट ओमनी पोटेंट, बिल्कुल मेरे चैनल के नाम से. ओमनी मीन्स ऑल, पोटेंट मीन्स पावर. Okay, so all powerful. Okay, like my channel Omni Gyan. Gyan means knowledge, Omni means all, so all knowledge. Okay, though I am not giving all knowledge because many of you keep asking me sir social studies, health education, maths, ये वो सबका videos बनाइए. You make videos on all these topics, but I provide you only videos on English and English grammar, right? But let me see, I'll try to keep up this name Omni. Okay, and I'll try to in future times I'll try to provide you knowledge on other subjects also as well. Anyways, let's come to the story. So hopeful says that the giant does not have all the law in his hand. The giant is not omnipotent, right? God is all powerful. So we should not take the giant seriously. Let us have patience. हम patience रखते हैं. Because even other prisoners, this is hopeful statement. Okay, hopeful ये कहता है कि even other prisoners whom the giant had captured had escaped from the dungeon. तो ऐसा सुना गया है, it has been heard by hopeful. Hopeful says that I have heard that this giant had kept other prisoners also in the dungeon, but some of the prisoners were successful in running away from the dungeon, from the captivity of the giant. तो इस giant के चुंगल से ऐसे बहुत सारे prisoners हैं जो पहले भी भाग चुके हैं. इसका मतलब कोई तो उपाय है, there is a way. और ऐसा कहा जाता है ना, it is said that where there is a will there is a way, so there is always a way, so let us keep patience. That is what hopeful encourages Christian. तो hopeful जो है Christian को encourage करता है कि हम थोड़े से patience रखते हैं, let us be courageous and let us think positively. हम optimistic thought रखते हैं, let us keep some optimistic thoughts, let us think positive, let us be patient and let us not lose courage, let us be courageous. So now they were waiting for another opportunity now. They were waiting for the giant to have another of his fits or madness. So now they already saw that when the giant becomes mad, his limbs becomes temporarily inactive, है ना. कुछ देर के लिए उसका limbs जो है वो inactive हो जाता है. This is the chance, okay, this is the only chance for Christian and hopeful that when the giant will go into another of his fits or go or become mad again, then they would find a chance to run away. ठीक है, तब वो भागने का कोई चांस ढूंढेगा. ओके, और वो अपॉर्चुनिटी बहुत एक गोल्डन अपॉर्चुनिटी होगा. दैट अपॉर्चुनिटी, दैट चांस इज गोइंग टू बी अ गोल्डन चांस. सो लेट अस वेट फॉर द जायंट टू हैव अनदर ऑफ हिज मैडनेस. अब क्या होता है कि टूवर्ड्स द इवनिंग के समय जो है, द जायंट वेंट डाउन टू द डंजन टू चेक वेदर द प्रिजनर्स हैड एक्सेप्टेड हिज एडवाइस और नॉट. तो द जायंट हैड गिवन देम टाइम दैट देखो तुम दोनों का भागने का कोई उपाय तो है नहीं, यू हैव नो वे टू रन अवे, सो इट इज़ बेटर यू कमिट सुसाइड and again I will come and you give me your final decision. So now in the evening the giant goes down to the dungeon to see whether the prisoners had accepted his advice or not. कि Christian और hopeful जो है वो दोनों किसी decision पे आए कि नहीं, whether they have arrived to any decision or not, or whether they have accepted his advice of committing suicide or not. But then again Christian and hopeful say that no, we will not commit suicide. Okay, so when he saw there is a giant, okay, when the giant saw that they were still alive, जब वो giant dungeon में आया, when the giant came to the dungeon once again, he saw that they were still alive. That means they were still intact with the decision only that no, we will not commit suicide. So now the giant became very, very angry, and now he warned them that because you did not agree to my advice, so your condition is going to be very bad now. It is going to be worst. It is going to be the worst one now. Your condition will be the worst now because you did not pay any seriousness to my to my advice of committing suicide. Okay, now at this Christian becomes extremely frightened and fainted. तो Christian जो है वो extremely frightened हो जाता है, डर जाता है और वो बेहोश जैसा हो जाता है. ओके, he faints, almost faints. ओके, Christian, क्योंकि Christian थोड़ा सा डरा हुआ भी है. ठीक है, फिर देख, hopeful encourages Christian by telling him that neither Apollyon nor the valley of the shadow of death can do any harm to them. See, hopeful constantly encourages Christian. होपफुल जो है वो डरा हुआ नहीं है, वो कॉन्स्टेंटली क्रिश्चियन को एनकरेज कर रहा है. ओके, सो नाउ ऑल्सो होपफुल एनकरेजेस क्रिश्चियन बाय टेलिंग हिम दैट सी नाइदर एपोलियन नॉर द वैली ऑफ द शैडो ऑफ डेथ कैन डू एनी हार्म टू अस. डोंट वरी. नाउ व्हाट इज एपोलियन? एपोलियन कम्स फ्रॉम द ग्रीक वर्ड अपोलो. एपोलियन मीन्स डिस्ट्रॉयर और एंजल ऑफ द बॉटमलेस पिट. पिट आपको पता है, खड्डा. ओके, पिट मीन्स इन हिंदी वी कॉल इट खड्डा. ओके, तो बॉटमलेस पिट मतलब ऐसा खड्डा या ऐसा कुआं टाइप जिसका कोई बॉटम नहीं है. लाइक से फॉर एग्जाम्पल अ वेल. ओके, अ वेल हैज अ ग्राउंड, राइट? तो बॉटमलेस वेल और बॉटमलेस पिट विल बी अ पिट और अ वेल दैट डज नॉट हैव एनी एंडिंग. इट इज इन्फिनिट. ओके, कितना नीचे वो जाएगा किसी को नहीं पता. सो एपोलियन मीन्स द डिस्ट्रॉयर और एंजल ऑफ द बॉटमलेस पिट. तो यही जो है होपफुल ने क्रिश्चियन को इस तरीके से एनकरेज किया. होपफुल एनकरेज क्रिश्चियन इन दिस वे दैट सी दिस जायंट इज नथिंग. इवन एपोलियन, जिन्हें हम डिस्ट्रॉयर या एंजल ऑफ द बॉटमलेस पिट कहते हैं, दिस एपोलियन whom we call the angel of the bottomless pit, even the valley of the shadow of death also cannot do any harm to us. So don't worry, we will find some way to escape. So hopeful says that he himself was even weaker than Christian, but he has not lost hope. तो hopeful जो है Christian को कहता है कि hopeful tells Christian that see, yesterday the giant beat us like anything. He beat us like hell. He has beaten us like hell. And my injuries are more than your injury. Hopeful tells Christian that hopeful's injury was even more than Christian. But hopeful has not lost hope. He has hope and courage inside him. So why do you worry? Hopeful tells Christian कि तुम्हारे घाव जो है और मेरा घाव अगर हम कंपेयर करें तो मेरा घाव ज़्यादा है, मेरा इंजरी ज़्यादा है, मैं ज़्यादा वीक हो चुका. आई हैव बिकम वीकर देन इवन यू, Christian. So brother, don't lose hope. We will find out some way. So hopeful tells Christian to be little more patient. बोलता है थोड़ा सा और पेशेंस रखो, धीरज रखो, हम लोग कुछ ना कुछ उपाय निकालेंगे. We will find some way out. Keep faith. Keep faith in God. Have patience, have courage, and think positive. So that night again the giant and his wife talk about the prisoners. तो उस रात फिर से giant और उसके जो बीवी है डिफिडेंस, उसकी बीवी डिफिडेंस, दोनों जो है प्रिजनर्स के, इन दो प्रिजनर्स के बारे में फिर से बात कर रहे हैं. एंड डिफिडेंस हिज वाइफ आस्क्स हिम वेदर द प्रिजनर्स हैड टेकन हिज एडवाइस टू कमिट सुसाइड, टू विच द जायंट रिप्लाइज नेगेटिव. तो डिफिडेंस जो है उसकी वाइफ जायंट से ये पूछती है, डिफिडेंस आस्क्स द जायंट, हर हस्बैंड, दैट वेदर द प्रिजनर्स हैव टेकन योर एडवाइस और नॉट. यू टोल्ड नो, you to advise them to commit suicide, whether have they taken your advice seriously? The giant says no, they have not. They refuse to commit suicide. Now diffidence tells the giant that okay, you take the prisoners to the castle yard, okay, the next day, and show them the bones and skulls of those other prisoners whom he had killed earlier. तो डराने के लिए, just to make them afraid, diffidence tells her husband, the giant, that tomorrow you take the two prisoners to the castle yard and you show them those bones, वो हड्डियाँ, वो skulls, those bones and skulls you show to the prisoners, okay, and you tell them that these were the other prisoners whom I had killed earlier. So your condition, both your condition will also become like them only. So it is better that you commit suicide. Otherwise, I will give you immense torture and you will not be able to bear the torture, that suffering. So it is better that you commit suicide. So ऐसे करके उनको जो है कैसल यार्ड में ले जाके उनको डराओ. Just take them to the castle yard, show them the bones and skulls of your previous prisoners and make them afraid. So next day again the giant did accordingly to make Christian and Hopeful afraid. तो giant जो है next day he took those two prisoners, Christian and Hopeful, to the castle yard and he showed them the bones and skulls just to make Christian and Hopeful afraid. Okay. The giant told them that these bones and skulls were of those pilgrims who had entered his property just like them. तो giant ने उन दोनों को कहा, the giant told Christian and Hopeful that you see these bones and skulls belong to those earlier pilgrims who had entered my property without my permission, just like you have entered. And look at their condition, what I have done to them. So it is better you commit suicide or else I will kill you also. So he had killed. तो जाइंट बताता है सी आई हैड किल देम टू आफ्टर मेकिंग देम सफ़र हेविली. तो मैंने उनको बहुत टॉर्चर किया, बहुत मैंने उनको मारा और फिर देखो वो मर गए. एंड लुक एट देयर बोन्स एंड स्कल्स नाउ इट लाइंग. सो इट इज़ बेटर दैट आई एम गोइंग टू डू द सेम विथ यू. सो विद इन 10 days द जायंट विल डू द सेम विथ क्रिश्चियन एंड होपफुल टू. तो जायंट ने ये बताया क्रिश्चियन और होपफुल को, इट विल बी होपफुल. ओके. सो द जायंट टोल्ड क्रिश्चियन एंड होपफुल दैट I am also going to do the same with you if you don't listen to my advice. So within 10 days, because you have refused to my advice of committing suicide, so within 10 days I am also going to do the same with you like I have done to the other prisoners. I'll give you heavy torture and suffering. So you go now. Okay. So that night the giant and his wife Diffidence were discussing about the prisoners on the bed. So as you see that every night this giant and his wife Diffidence, they discuss about the prisoners on the bed. Diffidence would be giving advice to him all the time. Okay. Now Diffidence, the wife, said that they are still surviving because of hope. Okay, not hopeful here, hope. Okay, here it is hopeful. By mistake I forgot to type hopeful. This is the name of that pilgrim, but here hope is that value. So wife tells the giant that you see those two prisoners are still surviving because they are thinking positively, because they have hope inside them. That is why they are still surviving, they are still living. So the giant tells her that he will check the prisoners the next morning. So giant, because he had already shown them the bones and skulls of the previous prisoners, so the giant tells his wife that tomorrow I will go again and check the prisoners, that whether after seeing the skulls and bones also they have become afraid or not. Tomorrow I will go and check in the morning. So on Saturday around midnight, Christian and Hopeful began to pray till dawn. तो सैटरडे जो है, सैटरडे रात को क्रिश्चियन और होपफुल दोनों प्रेयर कर रहे थे टिल डॉन. ओके, भोर होने तक दोनों प्रेयर कर रहे थे. Christian suddenly realizes that he had been a fool. Now Christian realizes something, that I have been a fool. So Christian realizes that I have been a fool in not discovering that the giant has a key near his bosom. Bosom means chest. This key is called promise. So Christian suddenly realizes that, oh, I have been a fool. There is a key near the chest of the giant and this key is called promise. How did not I discover it? How didn't I see it? मैंने कैसे उसको डिस्कवर नहीं किया, कैसे उसको ठीक से नहीं देखा, मैं बिल्कुल भूल चुका था, मैं एक स्टूपिड हूँ. He suddenly remembers that there is a key. इसका मतलब वो पहले ही भाग सकते थे. They could have run away earlier, right? But anyways, Christian suddenly realizes that the giant has a key and the name of the key is promise. तो इस key के मदद से, with the help of this key, we can run away. And this key has the power to open any door in the doubting castle. Generally, you see for different locks, we have different keys. One key cannot open all the lock, right? But this key is special one. Okay, ये जो key है, जिसका नाम promise है, this is a special key. And this key can open any door in the doubting castle. तो doubting castle में जितने भी दरवाजे हैं, एक ही चाबी से खोला जा सकता है. With this one key, any door in the doubting castle can be opened. So Christian pulls the key out from the giant's bosom, opens the lock of the door. So when the giant comes there and they are engaged in some talks or something like that, Christian pulls the key from the giant's bosom and opens the lock of the door. Okay, देन दे ओपन द आउटर डोर ऑल्सो सक्सेसफुली। तो क्रिश्चियन जो है चुपके से जायंट के चेस्ट से वो की निकाल लेता है एंड ही ओपन्स वन डोर। सो द फर्स्ट डोर ही ओपन्स, पहला दरवाज़ा वो सक्सेसफुली खोल देता है। एक्चुअली जायंट जो है वो सोया हुआ है, द जायंट इज स्लीपिंग व्हेन ही कम्स टू द डंजन, प्रोबेबली द जायंट इज स्लीपिंग देयर, ओके, वॉचिंग देम एंड देन ही फेल्ट अस्लीप, तो वो सो रहा है। तो इसका मौके का फ़ायदा उठा के टेकिंग दे ग्रैब दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी ऑफ हिज because he was sleeping. So Christian slowly pulls out the key from the giant's bosom and opens the lock of the first door. Okay, then after they open the first door, then they open the outer door also. There is an outer door which you can say the second door. Okay, they open the second door also successfully. After that, when they went to the last iron gate, एक बड़ा सा iron gate है, when they went to open the last iron gate, जब वो लास्ट आयरन गेट खोलने के लिए गए, दैट गेट मेड ए क्रीकिंग साउंड विच मेड द जायंट वेक अप। अब उस लोहे का दरवाज़ा जो है जब वो खोलने गए तो वो दरवाज़ा क्योंकि थोड़ा पुराना भी था, इट वॉज लिटिल ओल्ड ऑल्सो, इट वॉज मेड ऑफ आयरन ऑल्सो, सो इट मेड अ क्रीकिंग साउंड, ओके, एंड विद दैट साउंड द जायंट वोक अप। But the giant suddenly, out of anger, again he went under his usual fits, madness, and his limbs became inactive again. This is the opportunity that Christian and Hope were waiting for. कि वो फिर से उसके usual madness में चला जाए. He will go to his usual madness again. His limbs will become inactive, and we can run away. और यही हुआ. This same happened. Okay. So the giant despair could not chase and catch them. So giant despair could not move also. So as a result of his inactiveness, he could not chase. वो भाग नहीं पाया उनके पीछे, तो भाग नहीं पाया मतलब ही कुड नॉट रन, सो ही कुड नॉट चेज, सो ही कुड नॉट कैच देम. सो क्रिश्चियन एंड होपफुल वेर लकी इनफ एंड दे एस्केप फ्रॉम द डंजन and reached the highway, the king's highway, which is known as the king's highway, safely far away from the giant's area. So now Christian and hopeful, they found this golden opportunity. They ran away from the dungeon and they reached the highway, which is known as the king's highway, safely and far away from the giant's area. So Christian and hopeful were no more in the giant's area. Okay, so this is the story. Okay, now you see, look at the analysis that I have made. See, this story is basically giant despair is an allegorical story. Okay, giant despair is an allegorical story, which is an, I'll tell you the meaning of allegorical story. Now this giant despair is actually a small portion which is taken from the story The Pilgrim's Progress by the same writer John Bunyan. Okay, तो John Bunyan का Pilgrim's Progress आप पढ़िए, बहुत अच्छा book है. It's a great book by, it's a great book by John Bunyan. Okay, so from this book only, The Pilgrim's Progress, this story has been taken, okay, which is called The Giant Despair. ठीक है. अब what is the meaning of allegorical story? Allegorical story means a story which has a hidden meaning and the characters symbolize some attributes or qualities. जो जितने भी characters आप देखते हैं, in the beginning, introduction only I told you that the names of the characters are such because those characters actually represent or symbolizes some attributes or qualities or values. Okay, those characters are not actually characters, those are our human values that we must uphold. Okay, so giant despair represents the despair of hopelessness in our hearts. तो पहला कैरेक्टर जो है giant despair, ये क्या सिम्बोलाइज करता है या ये क्या रिप्रेजेंट करता है? इट रिप्रेजेंट्स द डिस्पेयर, द होपलेसनेस इन आवर हार्ट्स, कि हमारा दिल जो है कभी कभी इट गोज विदाउट एनी होप, वी बिकम डिप्रेस्ड, वी आर इन डिस्पेयर. डिस्पेयर मतलब ही है होपलेसनेस, राइट? सो giant despair, sometimes our hopelessness are very bigger, we lose all hope from our heart. So this character represents that. Okay, giant despair has no way that he can come out of his life that he right now he is living. Okay, hopeful represents hope, and he also plays the role of an encourager. See, constantly hopeful will be encouraging or giving hope to Christian, so he symbolizes hope or he is the encourager. Okay, the key which is called here, next you see the key which is called promise, symbolizes the belief in the assurance that a true Christian will be forgiven of his trespasses and errors and will be allowed at the celestial gate. Celestial gate matlab we can say heaven. Okay, a true Christian will be always forgiven. A true Christian, okay, not a Christian, a true Christian will always be forgiven even if it trespasses. See, Christian and hopeful, they trespass. Trespass matlab enter somebody's property without permission. So they entered the giant's property without his permission, but they still are able to escape. Why? Because he is a true Christian. That is why, despite they trespassed, despite they entered the giant's area without his permission, they were still able to escape. That means even if you trespass into somebody's area, or even if you do anything wrong in life, it happens. As human beings, we are not perfect, we make mistakes, we make errors in our lives, but if you are true in your religion, okay, you will still be allowed in heaven. आप हेवन में फिर भी अलाउड होंगे. सो दिस इज व्हाट द प्रॉमिस, दिस की सिंबलाइजेस. ठीक है, फिर हम देखते हैं द इम्प्रिजनमेंट इन डाउटिंग कैसल रिप्रेजेंट्स एक्सट्रीम स्पिरिचुअल डिस्ट्रेस. ये जो डाउटिंग कैसल में दोनों प्रिजनर्स गए थे, द टू प्रिजनर्स हु वर imprisoned in the doubting castle, what does that represent? This doubting, the imprisonment in the doubting castle, it represents spiritual crisis or spiritual distress. हम लोग कभी कभी spiritually distressed भी होते हैं, अपना hope खो देते हैं. तो वो जो period of imprisonment है, that represents, this period of imprisonment, it represents what? This extreme spiritual distress. Sometimes see, we are, you see, there are preachers, there are prophets who come and they talk about God, but we don't believe them, especially at the present time. हम believe नहीं करते बिल्कुल, right? Because we are surrounded by this material world. We are surrounded so much by matter or this material world that we don't simply believe in spiritualism. हमको लगता है कि spiritualism जो है, we feel that spiritualism is nothing but madness. There is no truth in spiritualism. Because nobody is able to prove whether God exists or not. Right? आप किसी से पूछिए कि God exist करता है कि नहीं. It is a feeling, you see. Nobody can show you God directly in front of you. It is a feeling. Through the divine process you can reach that spiritual stage. एक divine process के through ही आप वो spiritual stage पा सकते. नहीं तो आपको झूठ लगेगा. You will feel that these things are all false. Right? Okay. So this imprisonment shows spiritual crisis or spiritual distress. Christian, this character Christian represents the search for religious truth. तो Christian जो है, जो character है, this character represents what? The search for religious truth. यही मैंने कहा कि religious truth. We believe that God is, many a times we believe that because something wrong happens to us, we believe that there is no God. Again, when something right happens, we believe that, oh, God exists. If you pass with good marks in exam, you feel that, oh, there is God. If you fail in exam or you get less marks, you feel that no, God is not there to look after me. So the search for religious truth is not whether God exists or not. It is about whether you trust in Him, H capital, whether you trust, whether you have faith in Him, in that great God, in that great Lord or not. Diffidence, the wife of giant despair. Diffidence represents lack of trust. She is always in confusion. That is why she gives advice to her husband to go and check whether they have taken his advice or not, whether they have died or not. So lack of trust. This also we have. We don't believe in God just simply like that. So we have lack of trust. We have lack of faith. We have lack of faith in God. Right? Okay. Then you see, what is the message of the story? So after the allegorical representation, after the symbolisms used in the story, we now come to the message of the story. Message बहुत clear. It's a very clear cut message. The message of the story is that we must keep faith, courage and hope even during extreme difficult times. हमारे life में extreme difficult times आते हैं. We have extremely difficult times in our life, right? We have extreme crisis in our life. We have problems. We have sufferings. But amidst all those things, we should keep faith, courage and hope. We should not lose faith in God. We should not lose courage in ourselves. We should trust ourselves. We should have hope that one day good time will also come. Let me go on trying. Okay. So the message of the story. Second, you see that several negative forces will give us trouble, torture, sufferings, but we should not be discouraged and always keep hope. So same like this only. There will be several negative forces. Somebody tells you something negative. Okay. You take tension. That is a trouble for you. Okay. You are going through very bad time. That will give trouble to you, torture to you. But don't become discouraged. Keep hope. Okay. Keep hope. Keep faith. Okay, so this is the message, simple message of the story. Okay, so I hope you like the story and have understood the story very well. If there is any doubt, please feel free to comment in the comment section. Okay, and okay, there's one more point that I forgot to tell you, is that the story also teaches us not to harm anyone even though they harm us. Okay, because at one point of time, hopeful says that God forbids us to kill anybody, so God forbids us to kill ourselves also. So the story also teaches us that don't harm anybody even if they harm you. But do we follow all these things in our life? No, we don't follow. Okay, even before people harm us, we are always ready to harm people. That is not what God has told us, right? So God teaches us not to harm anybody even if they harm you. Even don't harm yourselves also, and we should always have this forgiving nature. See, Christian and hopeful could have easily, after coming out, they could have easily tried to arrest the giant, because they already know that this giant is a devil. So they could have easily gathered forces and tried to kill him, but they did not do anything. They just left. So we should have forgiving nature. Okay, so the message of the story is simple, and if you have any problem understanding at any point, please feel free to comment in the comment section. Okay, I'm always there to reply to your comments. And subscribe to the channel, like and share my videos with all your friends, invite them to subscribe to the channel. And I am going to complete the syllabus of class 11 English now. Don't worry, at regular intervals videos will come. Okay, so that's all, with love from Omni Gyan, and all the best to all of you. Thank you so much.